Instead of asking these young people to take on millions of dollars of debt, what if I sold the business and I gave them millions of dollars for what they've contributed to me and helping me build this business, and then put them on a path with a larger firm, bigger and bigger and bigger? That's great. Is it now running efficiently and organically growing? And that's the challenge of some of the larger firms.
Welcome to the Total Succession Show. I'm your host, Tyson Ray, joined by Kim Cochenour. We're glad you're here. Subscribe at totalsuccession.com/podcast and let each episode guide you closer to a confident, well-planned exit. Today's conversation just might be the nudge you need to start preparing for what's next.
Tyson, one of the things we keep hearing from advisors is they think they're ready to sell, but they just don't know what they don't know.
Yes, and so they just let the urgent continue to crowd out the important, and they keep doing the job that they love to do, and time just keeps ticking away, and what they don't realize is there's some resources that they maybe should explore as they're trying to figure out what a sale would look like, and we're excited to have Peter on today as one of those resources to help advisors understand there are people out there that can help them.
Yeah.
I like that I'm a resource.
Are you a resource?
That's exciting.
Peter, that's why we brought you on. We do think that you are a great resource. You help advisors find the right match, not just the highest offer. And we're going to actually talk a little bit about what makes the deal actually work long term. Because I think sometimes advisors are kind of in that short term thought because that's the closest thing that they can see. And so our goal is to help people understand what they should be doing now to make sure they don't regret it later. So, Peter, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah. So before we jump in, can you actually give our listeners a quick overview about what Wise Rhino does and kind of why we brought you on today?
Sure. I'd love to. And I should probably explain why it's called Wise Rhino as well.
Good call.
So Peter Campagna, the 33 years in financial services, was drafted into this kind of organically about 7 years ago. I was always in the investment in the distribution side. And over the course of my first 25 years, always worked with retirement consultants and wealth advisors, and had gotten to know my partner at the time when we started Wise Rhino, got to know thousands of advisors. And about 7 or 8 years ago, we were getting calls from these folks, our friends, advisors around the country, they were saying, "Hey, this is firm calling me and they're offering me all this money and they want me to join. And they say they're putting this group together and sounds exciting. Is it too good to be true?" And we were my partner and I were unofficially advising our friends. And we said, "Hey, this seems to be kind of a growing trend. Maybe we should consider leaving BlackRock," which BlackRock is a wonderful place, but it doesn't take much to convince us to leave it. And we opened up Wise Rhino and started officially advising people and kind of taking them through a process. We aren't traditional bankers, but we took them through a process where we would set them up with 8 different types of firms or however many they wanted to talk to, different flavors and characteristics, and let them find the best match and then stay with them throughout the entire process to find ultimately the best fit for them, and then did the legal work and did the financial work and ultimately made the best deal and stay with them until it was all closed and done. It's called Wise Rhino because my partner's retired now, but he was a college football nose tackle, and he would say this and admit this. He looked a little bit like a rhino when he played, and he played like a rhino. And we read an article where it said you have to pick an animal, a strong animal, and a strong adjective. I think we spun some wheels, and it turned out like Wise Rhino, and it stuck. And we joke like we would have named it something serious if we thought we were going to be successful. And then J.G. Wentworth was already taken. That was kind of fancy sounding.
Yeah.
But so it's Wise Rhino, and it's way too late to go back now because people actually know it.
I don't think you made a bad choice at all.
Yeah.
It sounds logical. You didn't pick anything super silly. So I think you kept out of the giraffe lane, out of the dolphin lane. You're fine. You're perfectly fine,
silly.
Peter.
It's a little silly.
That's okay. So you kind of alluded to this a little bit. You wanted to build this in the first place because you saw a need right in the marketplace. But what did you actually see in in the conversations you were having with your peers at that time or the friends that you had built that you said, "You know what? We need to actually step into this space and do something different because it's clearly not there."
It's funny, like, I think advisors, and you all know this better than I do. I don't think I don't think they realize how incredibly valuable the business they build. I think they intuitively know, and it's a lucrative profession, right? And you realize we're in the money business, right?
Yeah.
So, we all do very well on financial services, but I think where we were first attracted to it is these check sizes. Like, when they started throwing around some of these numbers is what got everyone perked up. And when
Mm.
they started saying, "Hey, this is the opportunity, and here's what the stock growth could be, and here's what we could put together, this $10 billion company, this $100 billion company." And the numbers are what made everyone sit up in their chairs. Is this real or not? And that's what we kept on hearing when we started the firm is this real? Is this going to happen? And then a couple years into it, it started being real. Like, when the first recapitalizations started happening, we had one client, to not to be named, but they very deftly took 100% stock. They traded in a 100, they sold their firm for 100% stock in the firm that acquired them.
Wow.
That stock tripled 2 years later.
Whoa.
They recapitalized for a triple. Now, that's extraordinary. But what a gutsy move to trade your equity for 100% of the equity of the acquiring firm. Like, so when that kind of stuff happens, you think, uh, wow, something's going on here. Like, is it frothy? Is it real? And listen, 6 years later, it continues to be. Now, listen, there's been some ups and downs. There's interest rate
Yeah.
spikes. There's things, but listen, multiples haven't stopped. The interest hasn't slowed down. If a 700 basis point increase in the cost of capital hasn't slowed down this interest, and I still have 8 or 9 firms, or as many firms as I want to engage for my clients, interested in really wanting to partner with my clients. The thesis is still overwhelmingly positive, and this is happening. This consolidation continues to happen.
Help those that don't know, what does Rise Rhino do?
It's a misnomer that the weak are selling because they have
Mm.
to. It is not the weak that are selling. It's the strong that are choosing to partner, right? So that's thing number one. It's not, I'm dying, so I have to sell. Nobody wants to buy those practices, right? Well, I mean, they might scoop them up to absorb them into something else, but it's these strong firms saying something's going on here. I want to be part of something bigger and stronger, and go even further, right? But when you have a practice in it attracting attention, you get calls from all these aggregating firms. I track 200 different buying firms. And if they have their act together, at least 75 are calling out actively to everyone. And then there's recruiters who want you to come to LPL, or come to Ozag, or come change in custody at Kestra, or or somewhere, Cetera, or go somewhere else. And then there's folks that, they want to buy you, or they want you just to change custody in broker dealer. And then there's folks who are business brokers, or there's other bankers like myself who maybe are short on business. They might call you. There is so much dust being kicked up and so many people calling you. I can't blame you for shutting your phone off and not wanting to talk to any of them,
Yes.
right? And it's a shame because, if you all, because if there's like a great practice in, let's say, Wisconsin, who someone who you could really help, and someone who has a practice who, let's say, they don't have a succession plan, and maybe they were 50 miles away from where your office is, and boy, they could really do well by being by part of your practice or someone else's practice. Boy, that person needs help, but so much dust is being kicked up. They don't have anywhere to go. They don't know to reach out to me. They don't know to reach out to you, or to reach out to someone they could partner with. So I represent advisors, and I take them through this process. I get paid by advisors.
So they're coming to you from a referral source. Um, what are they usually focused on when they're finally knocking on your door or in your inbox? And what are they not thinking about that they probably should be?
Well, the first is the real cost of internal succession. This one's such a tough one. There's a plan. Maybe they've got children in the business. maybe they've got young folks who've been part of the business that have helped them grow, who they've transitioned some of the smaller clients to that have been loyal to them. And who they're thinking, okay, maybe this person borrows some money. Maybe I want to phase out. Maybe I turn the business over to them. I let them, let them, they let me take an outsized portion of the revenue as a way to pay me off. Like the problem with all of that has been, and I've had many clients who have children in the business and in situations I just described, many, like at least 40% of my clients have that situation. But the problem is these businesses have become so incredibly valuable. The internal succession is almost, it isn't even remotely close to paying what the business is actually worth. So what about flipping the script? What about saying, instead of asking these young people to take on millions of dollars of debt, what if I sold the business and I gave them millions of dollars for for what they've contributed to me and
Mhm.
helping me build this business, and then put them on a path with a larger firm where they get to take my income as I start to phase out and retire, and they have private equity stock, and they get to not only make a huge income, as they grow the business, but also get to perhaps make millions more as shareholders of this private equity firm, like a different mentality. Instead of having these young people borrow and take over the money machine that I built, why not reward them more than they could ever imagine
Mm.
right now, and then be part of something bigger and better and make their fortune in a different way. That's so what they're not considering, Kim, is the real cost of internal succession. They don't consider if when they do sell, the income change. Like many, many, many of my clients make seven figures plus. And when they sell their firm, they do not make seven figures anymore,
Yeah.
right? You don't want to make seven figures. When you're in a position where you're trading in a dollar salary for 10, 11, 12 times, then you don't want to make $1 million anymore. You're going to make 250 or 350 or 400,000, right? You want to make less because you're about ready to get it multiplied. And for someone that's used to making $1.5 million, $2 million, it's tough to go down to make $500,000. You have to get ready for that. Now, you hopefully got a check for 20 or 30 million, but you'd be amazed how quickly people forget that they got a check for 20 or 30 million dollars. Like super fast they forget that they made a check for 120 million, 20 or 30 million dollars. They worry about consents. If they make a change, they think that clients aren't going to consent over to the new firm. They always consent over. I've never had a client not bring over 98% of their book. Clients always come and follow wherever they go. The relationship is theirs. The other thing is advisors. Like if something that's not considered, if you have 1099s that are part of your firm, advisors that are not W-2 in your organization, folks that do have their own standalone practices, don't assume that they're going to come along. Like if they really do have standalone practices inside of your practice, uh, even if they don't have standalone practices, but they have the relationships, you cannot assume that they're going to go along with you, even if they have employment agreements. If that's not a rock solid relationship and you aren't prepared to sort of buy them down or buy them out, there's a chance that at that moment they might leave, and that will
Mm.
have an effect on your deal. You need to be prepared to share and make a meaningful offer to buy those folks down or buy those folks out. A lot of times folks aren't ready for that. They think, oh yeah, Jim's good. He's come along with me. Well, sometimes Jim's not good. And he's taking his $1 million book and doing his own
Going
thing,
elsewhere.
right?
Mhm.
That sometimes comes up and surprises people, right?
Huh.
I don't know. That's a lot.
That is a lot.
I'm emptying the candy store here.
Yeah.
Hey, that's what we're doing. That's the whole point of this.
So, one of the things that you talked about that's kind of the trends in the industry is a lot like I like the phrase, there's a lot of dust being kicked up. People probably have a misconception of who's doing the buying right now and how deals are being structured and what are the advisors actually responding to. I think that there's some of those things that are kind of lost. So, could you provide a little perspective on what you're seeing on who's out there making these buys? How are the deals being structured and what are advisors actually leaning towards these days?
All right. This is going to make me incredibly unpopular, Tyson. I'm going to give this one a shot.
There you go.
I'm sticking up. Here we go. I'm sticking up for private equity. Here we go.
It's
Uh,
okay.
Private equity is not evil. Listen, they are very shrewd investors. This is like when people used to protest outside of BlackRock. I'm gonna stick up for BlackRock too. I was always protesters. I was always crossing a picket line whenever I went to work in San Francisco. People protesting BlackRock. BlackRock's the world's largest shareholder of Lockheed Martin. Of course it's an index. I just wanted to say, people, your parents own the index. BlackRock has no choice. Go tell your parents to stop buying the index, and then BlackRock will stop being the largest shareholder of it. Like, anyway, so private equity is not inherently evil. They're savvy investors. Okay, private equity is behind all of this. It is all the aggregating firms, all the wealth aggregating firms, for the most part, all the insurance brokerage firms that are building out wealth in retirement, capabilities. Private equity is behind all of it. Private equity is not inherently evil. It is not, but they are savvy investors. Okay, private equity is it is removed. It is a step removed from what advisors who sell these businesses feel. They never feel it directly. They truly do not. These firms invest in operating companies, and these operating companies run the business. It is the management that squares off with private equity. It is never the advisors, right? Um, the private equity helps professionalize the business. They help provide resources. They keep folks on track. They help drive them. They provide the capital to grow these businesses. And then when they've got them, organized and working and doing, yes, they sell them, they recapitalize them and provide liquidity, and then they move on to the next one, right? So that's I guess that's the first one. That private equity is not a bad thing. It is the first driver that I would say is not a bad thing. Okay. Structure of deals. All right. So you want them. They're the ones that are providing the money. The deal structure has changed a little bit over the years, but it's still kind of fundamentally the same. It is cash up front, stock in these private equity firms, which, by the way, you want, and 2/3 of the time, the stock that comes is on a tax deferred basis. Usually the holding company is structured as a partnership. So the stock you receive is tax deferred until you sell it, right? And when there is a recapitalization, which happens every 4 to 5 years, either the private equity company moves to a different fund or sells to a different private equity fund company, right? That's your opportunity for liquidity. You don't have to sell. It's not a taxable event until you choose to sell your stock, right? So it's usually, let's call it 65% of the proceeds up front in cash, another 15 to 20% of the proceeds in stock, and then typically about 15% of the proceeds held back for a year based on flat EBITDA or revenue, and then released after the first year, just making sure that you don't go backwards the first year. Okay, so 65% in cash, 15, maybe 20% in stock at close as well, and then a portion, maybe 15%, maybe 10% held back after the first year to make sure you don't go backwards. And then there's usually in a standard deal a 3-year earnout, which says, hey, if you grow at anywhere from 5 to 25% on average over the first 3 years, there could be an additional 1 times, 2 times, 3 times, or 4 times EBITDA. Sometimes it's EBITDA based, sometimes it's revenue based, but there is an opportunity for anywhere from another 1 to 4 times EBITDA in additional payment after the end of 3 years, which is also considered long-term capital gains because it's a delayed closing proceed. That's a typical deal.
And so advisors are really responding to that type of deal structure?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Oh,
for
yeah.
sure. I mean,
So how do the broker dealer firms, how do the wirehouses even keep up with any of this?
You mean the hostages? Uh,
Oh,
I'm
my
so-
word.
do you
Yeah,
have
sure, them.
do you have do you have wirehouse folks listen to you, Tyson?
We don't. We might, but I left a wirehouse, and so I feel like Shawshank Redemption, right? Like I'm Morgan Freeman walking on the beach, going like I'm free, and it's like a
I
decade ago.
I've s-
Still, I feel
I
that way.
worked with wirehouse people for years. I love them. And some of the most talented, smartest people are held hostage at Merrill Lynch and Morgan Stanley and UBS. There was a time I'm getting myself on. There was a time where that sophistication was needed, and you needed the trading, and you needed the product suite, and amazing salespeople. I honestly don't know why someone would hang a shingle there anymore and pay for their office and pay for what you get. I don't know why.
Mm.
I honestly don't know why. Um, if I wasn't an old man and wasn't gonna, retire in the next 5 years, I would make my crusade to break all those people out and give them freedom. Uh, because they don't need to be there anymore.
Mm.
I'm
Interesting.
sorry. There you go, Tyson. So
Like we said, we'll ask you the questions. You get to respond, Peter. That's why we brought you on.
listen, it's great. They're great people. It's just, boy, the REA has all the sophistication that they have now
Mhm.
and can just serve the client, perhaps in a even better way than they can.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's my opinion. That's my opinion, Marilyn.
So what should people look for, or what mistakes have you seen people make in these deals that they end up regretting? That if they would have asked the right question or picked the right partner, they maybe would have avoided that mistake.
The loss of control of an entrepreneur, I can never prepare them for that.
Hmm.
I've had people who've never had a W-2 in their entire life. And I don't know whether it's mental. I don't know whether it's their baby and they don't have full control of it. There's some people who never settle into it. They just don't. They can't. They don't want to. I mean, I know they know in their heart it was the right thing to do, but there is occasionally some folks who just never settle into it. They just don't. It, they don't. They don't. It's rare. It's rare, and it is different, right? It is different. You don't control. There's an element of control you give up. I don't undersell that. I can't get someone prepared for that. You all run your own business. You run it the way you want. There's an element of that you lose. Now, you aren't punching a clock. They just gave you $30 million. Even though you forgot, they still gave you they still gave you 30 million. Something's going to change.
Yeah.
It takes a super talented, a special person to grow a practice. Sometimes they look in the mirror and they say, I don't have that. I have a trusted person who I love and they take care of my clients. Sometimes they say, I don't think this person can run this practice. Like they might love a second, but in their heart, they know that if they weren't there, that as much as this person is a super important, you know, Robin to their Batman, they're not a Batman. And that's a concern to them. Right.
Mhm.
And they want what's best for their clients, and they know that they don't have on paper they might look like they have a successor, but in their hearts they know they don't have one.
Yeah.
And that a lot of times that says I need to either make it easier for them, or I need to join up with something where maybe they can be part of something where I can give them the chance to maybe lead with some help.
Yeah.
That happens quite a bit.
I
Yeah.
believe that.
Yeah. It takes a special person to build a firm, right? It truly does. It's hard.
So on the private equity side, you got the regionals and the smaller ones, and then 40 real firms, and then 20 real firms. The perception is as these firms get bigger, they become less flexible because the bigger you get, the more necessary operations and consistencies are. Um, if someone was, if you were talking to one of your clients about the pros and cons, is the bigger better, or is the bigger coming with more standardization and more having to give up at the same time, probably knowing more of what's actually going to happen because they have the policies and procedures in place versus other firms that have maybe more flex because they're smaller, or is that a misconception?
Okay, here's I'm gonna use the I word. The I word is integration, right? This is the weird part about this private equity cycle. And that is they hold these firms for 4 or 5 years. They integrate a little bit. They do the low-hanging easy integration, but part of the hold cycle prevents them from really doing a lot of the long-term things that they should do to make them super efficient and organically growing, right? Because they know they're just going to pass it off. Like it requires a little bit more patience and a little bit long-term investing. This is where the private equity cycle is not a good thing because no one wants to plunk down the really long-term money because you you're only a medium-term investor. So you have to have organic growth. At a certain point, all this stuff has to lead to organic growth. You can't just keep stacking inorganic acquisitions on top of each other, right? And this is where it's all going to come to a head, right? You have to, all this has to make sense, and it has to scale, and you have to have organic growth, right? And that's exactly what you're referring to, Tyson. Bigger and bigger and bigger. That's great. Is it now we're running efficiently and organically growing? And that's the challenge of some of the larger firms. And in order to do that, you have to integrate systems, and you have to get people all rowing in the same direction. And that might involve all doing the same investment portfolios. And that's why you've seen the creative plannings. And, in some of the firms being a little more heavy handed about, hey, if you're going to join, you're going to do this. And listen, I don't like it for my clients, and my clients resist something like that. But if I was a shareholder, I would like that. As long as there's not a rebellion, and you can retain people from running a business standpoint, it makes sense to be a little more heavy-handed. For my clients who are entrepreneurs and running independently, do they want to join something like that? Not many call me and say, "Sure, let me sign up for the army."
Yeah, I was gonna say there's a reason why they've run their own business for a
Well,
long
that's
time. If they
2
have
deviations.
some autonomy in this next transition, that gives it allows them to let go of some of the things they don't wanna hang on to anymore, but keep the parts that they really like, depending on where they end up going.
So one deviation is usually how they want to go. I'll give up the stuff I don't like, and then I would like to consider using their models someday if they're good, and if I want to, and they'll drift to them as they should. Because listen, you doing it yourself in Paducah, Kentucky, with the one person who took a economics course. Listen, the 30 CFAs at White Wealth Enhancement Group are probably going to do it better than you. Like, uh, so eventually drift to that, right? But when you're ready and at your leisure, and that's the one deviation move as opposed to the full integration. But all these firms are going to have to start making this work and integrate and organically growing. That will be the challenge of whether this works or not. Yeah, whether private equity works. Yeah.
And catch the wealth transfer that when the clients pass away, if you don't keep the wealth, that's another risk out there. So if you're listening to this this is a lot of the industry, it's the advisor and it's the assistant or two, and they're heading into that 60s, and it's like everyone on the team is probably going to be wanting to be done somewhere around about the same time. What's the solutions within these firms to solve for that?
You mean like everyone at the team is wanting to retire in three
Well,
or 4 years, or?
I have friends and colleagues at different firms that they have 1 or 2 they're 60, the assistant's 64, the other assistant's 64, and they don't have the G2 or that next gen underneath them, and they're looking to be acquired. Do these private equity firms or these aggregators have the resources to bring in the staffing that they don't have for that succession?
All right. So you should have called me 10 years ago. Uh, Number one. And that's why I want the 40 and 50-year-olds thinking about this now. Okay. Because you rode the horse a little too long, and now it's okay. But you know what that person should be thinking about? And again, listen, I have clients like that, but my search for them is very different. It is. My search for them is, okay, I'm going to have to be a little, and that's why I track 200 firms, by the way. And that's why I track 60 serious firms or 40 serious firms. Because now I have to go out, and before I have to go have conversations and say, who do you have in Western Minnesota? Do you have a presence there? Is there a place for this person to fold into eventually? Because in 3 years, they want to go somewhere else. Now, all of a sudden, I am now curating a very different set of a list, and a set of potential partners. And that might not be 8, and it might be 4, but I might have to vet 30 firms before I come up with 4 that have a Western wherever presence, that there is a natural place for them to fold into. And the multiple won't be quite as big, but it'll still be good. It's still a valuable business. And the choices might not be as broad, but I will find them a partner. And I might have to go to a great regional firm where it say, hey, is there a chance to marry? So all kinds of different options. Options aren't as great there, but there's still things for someone like that. The more the less remote that office is located, the better. If it's in Chicago, more options.
As we've been hearing, the more time you give yourself, the more options you have. And starting it before you actually think that's something you want to pursue, because you, as the seller, are less attractive in the eyes of the buyer because you just have less time, less options, it sounds like.
Well, you don't sell. I mean, it's like a different path. Like you create this money machine. You're making a great living, right? And you say, I'm gonna ride this horse and continue to make this great living. Well, I don't want to give that up. It's just a different way. It just manifests itself in a different way. Okay. I get off the making $1 million horse, and now I get on the making $300,000 horse, but I put 10 million in the bank. Now I grow my 10 million, right? Now I have private equity stock that's appreciating. Now I involve an organization that's going to give me a chance to grow very quickly, and I can grow my income back to to $1 million. It's just a different way to look at things. I view it as a de-risking and a different way to sort of achieve your financial goals. It is not selling and I just killed my money machine. It's just a de-risking and different way to it's a different kind of money machine, right? And it's good. It's not a selling and it's over. I sold. I'm going to go hit the beach. It's anything but.
So as listening, if you're listening to this and you're kind of asking yourself a question about at what point in the process do you start bringing other team members into the discussion? So I'm coming to you and we're going to start exploring these offers and what have you. Do you communicate to the whole team? Do you just communicate to the executive team or the leadership, or do you have a recommendation?
Yeah. If you are Tyson, if you are 68 and you have a second gen who's going to leave once they find out you're selling the firm and they expect to say, if they're an important part of your succession, then you need to be brought in maybe right from the beginning. And you need to be, and those proceeds need to be shared with you, even if you're not on the capitalization table, right? And you need to be treated like an owner. So we have that very candid discussion saying, if this is an important young person, especially if you're older, then the young person needs to be standing right next to you and being part of this meeting, right? And if not at the beginning, then very shortly when you get down to those semifinalists, this they need to be part of it. Um, if you're going to be still active and part of the firm, you're leading the firm, you got to be careful sowing the seeds of discontent. You you're I say you don't really introduce people into it until you've decided on who that partner is going to be, because if you do it too early, they're going to ask a lot of questions that you don't know the answer to yet because you haven't decided on a partner. What happens to my benefits? What happens to this? What happens to that? Well, the answer is you don't know. So you have to decide on a partner before you really share with the team, because you can't answer the questions then. And then you usually don't do it until you're about halfway through 2/3 through diligence, legal documents sort of signed, and it's going to be a deal. Sometimes deals break, but in general, ours don't. But sometimes deals break for reasons. But you need to make sure the deal's going to happen. And when you know the deal's going to happen, now it's time to share that it's going to happen. And if you have a successor or a key person, they need to be sworn in maybe a little sooner than the broader team.
That makes sense. So, Peter, as we kind of start to land the plane, what's the best piece of advice you can share with the advisors listening to this right now? Those who've been putting this off, um, what would you give them the nudge to do?
Nudge to do. Um, if you're unsure about this, if you're unsure, everyone says, what can I do to prep? What can I do in advance? Grow. Okay. Here's my advice. If you're unsure, just keep on growing. Here's what you do if you're unsure. Just keep growing your practice. Keep on growing it with recurring revenue sources. De-emphasize the broker-dealer work that you do, okay? It's more asset-based work. The more you emphasize your broker-dealer work, the more you de-emphasize your transactional work. I mean, insurance work can be important, but the less transaction, the more recurring revenue, the more valuable your business is. The less complicated your investment work is, the less secret sauce that you have with your illiquid Oregon timber futures, the better. Okay. Just, listen, it is what it is. The more straightforward your stuff is than planning based, blocking, tackling, the better. Okay. Um, so those are things that you can do. Just don't stick your head in the sand. Like, find out what you're worth. It doesn't
Mm,
take much. I mean, if you have a conversation with me or someone else, listen, it doesn't take much for me to, in a conversation, to give you a sense of what your practice might be worth just at a high level. I mean, I don't have to we do formal evaluations and pro formas and things like that. But everyone says, well, I got to get this cleaned up or I got to get this out of the expense. Like, forget it. Like, you pro forma all that stuff out anyway. You don't have to be running your country club membership out of the P&L for 3 years. That gets cut out anyway. Like, you don't have to clean up anything. It all gets cleaned up when you sell your business. Like, it
mhm.
gets pro forma'd out anyway. So there's nothing to clean up. Grow your business, make it recurring revenue. If you're curious, find out how much your business is worth, and you'd be shocked at the opportunities that are available. Don't wait till you're 78 to have a conversation with someone. And then don't be surprised at how amazing some of these and exciting some of these opportunities are at these aggregating firms. Like, PE is not the devil, and there's a lot of ways to make money. And that's all I'll say.
It's a good perspective. Thanks for sharing that, Peter.
Yeah.
Tyson, what do you want to leave the listeners with today after our conversation with Peter?
Well, according to Peter, as an advisor to advisors, PE isn't bad, and it's definitely an option in the succession of a practice, and it's something that you should consider. So, since our philosophy is we're trying to make decisions we're not going to regret in the future, even though you have that family member or you have that junior advisor or you have a succession that was internal, I think before you make the decision, you should explore all the options. And PE and these aggregators and firms that Peter works with to try and help matchmaking is something that you should consider before you make that final decision.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's a wrap for today, Peter. Thank you so much again for hanging out with us today and sharing your perspective and your true heart for helping others. It was very apparent.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll be back soon with more conversations like this.
These conversations are designed to support your next move, however close or far it may be. Tap subscribe and let each episode guide you closer to a confident, well-planned exit. I've wrestled with these things myself, and that's exactly why I created something to help you do it with less stress and more direction. My book, Total Succession, is now available on Amazon. Inside, I break the process down into 5 clear steps to help you exit on your terms with confidence, full compensation, and your client's best interests at heart. You can also visit totalsuccession.com/podcast to download a free starter guide that walks you through my SPACE framework: see, prepare, act, commit, exit. Remember, you only exit your business once. Create the space to do it well. Thanks for listening. Until next time.